Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us on Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. The recent warm-up has us thinking spring. Now is the time when nurseries and greenhouses are starting seeds that will bring color to our homes and landscapes in the coming months. We asked our resident gardener, Julie Parker-Dickerson, to take us behind the scenes at Red Wagon Plants in Hinesburg, where they've been potting, planting, and preparing since last Thanksgiving to get your garden ready.
A few weeks ago, you joined me in my classroom with an ecology club who is starting seeds under grow lights. Today, we're at Red Wagon Plants, and we're going to be joining Sarah Bacon, the production manager, who's starting thousands of seeds. It's about 20 degrees at the beginning of March, but inside these greenhouses, it's about 80 degrees, and it feels like a tropical island. We're going to check out how the professionals get these seeds started to make our gardening season as productive as ever.
What we're seeding right now is cold hardy crops and crops that might take a little longer than others, like peppers, artichokes, asparagus, and a lot of all assorted cold crops.
Do you have a way that you like to plant these? Do you plant them by hand? Do you use some machinery to do this?
All of these that we've gotten as cuttings, we hand plant them. We have a vacuum seeder that we seed a lot of things with. We have a vibro seeder that we seed with, and then we use just our hands if it's big enough seed.
Tell me a little bit more about the vibro seeder. What is that?
It's like a little wand, and it has a dial that turns vibration up or down, again, depending on the size of the seed. And it just helps you, the seed kind of come out in a small funnel, so you can direct it into where you want it to go.
Can you also tell us a little bit more about the vacuum?
Yeah, the vacuum seeder is amazing. It saves a lot of time. We use it for all of our spinaches, mustards, arugula. It's a device that has different plates in it, depending on the seed, the size of the seed. And we put our little tray right underneath. Vacuum sucks the seed into the holes. You flip it onto the tray and you release the suction, and the seeds just drop in. And then we do it all over again, hundreds of times. When we seed, we always water the seeds in, and then it depends on the temperature and the sun and the wind and all the variables. But for the most part in this house, our propagation house, everything gets watered each day.
Can you tell me a little bit about Red Wagon's potting mix? Your soil is so, it smells excellent in here.
Yeah, our soil comes from Vermont compost. It's very heavy with compost. It has some perlite in it, but it's very alive. Our plants can live in it into the summer, and we don't ever really have to feed them. If the seed requires a little lighter soil, we'll mix some vermiculite in it, but it's the same soil across the board. We get one kind of soil in, and we use it for seeding and for potting up, transplanting. We use it even for our perennial mix, but we might mix in some bark into it to get some better drainage. But it's a universal soil for us here.
So I have to ask about labeling, because I always have a problem with labeling. Tell me about your process to do that.
It's very important for us to have our plants labeled properly. So it's something we stress as we're working on the table to make sure everything's accurate. Especially when it comes to like tomatoes, they all look exactly the same. They are labeled a very specific way when they get seeded, which translates when we go to pot them up, and there's a trickle-down effect of following that tag all the way through. And we make all of our tags here in-house, and I make them all through the winter, and yeah, try to prep as much as possible.
Right above our heads are some hanging planters.
Yes.
And I always purchase a hanging planter from you every year, at least one.
And this is what it looks like as a baby.
That is so awesome. So are those things that you've started from seed, or are those plugs?
These are cuttings that we got in from other growers. There's not much that we seed that goes into a hanging basket. They're mostly annual flowers that get potted up into these guys and then cared for until around Mother's Day. They're ready. Yeah.
That's awesome. So this is just the beginning of those robust
Yes.
planters that you sell.
Yes, yes. There's some days we do 600 hanging baskets in one day.
And now I noticed that there's a little packet inside of each one
Yeah,
of these.
yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about the function of that little
It's
packet?
a beneficial insect. We're all organic. We do beneficial insects. There's a person here that does all the IPM, and so they scout once a week. So we check every single table, and we get ahead of the problem.
Wow, I learned so much working with Sarah Bacon in the greenhouse. I really love the vibroseeder. Who doesn't want one of those at home? So just a friendly reminder, gardeners, it's a little too early to do that planting outside, but spring is just around the corner. April's a great time to plant trees and shrubs. And if you're really getting antsy, remember to get out those seed catalogs. You can even order bare root plants at this point. So just remember, take it easy on starting the seeds. Make sure you keep them nice and moist, and be patient. There's going to be plenty of time to garden. Back to you, Jolie.
Our thanks to Julie and Sarah. Our second story is another sure sign of spring, maple. Vermont has been experiencing the warm days and cold nights that make sap and syrup flow. And this weekend, March 22nd and 23rd, the Maple Open House Weekend. Sugar makers from Burke to Bennington and everywhere in between are opening their sugar houses to the public to taste the sweet stuff and learn how sap becomes syrup. At the end of today's program, I'll have information on how you and your family can take in this spring tradition. Last year, Ben Willis visited a sugar house for the first time and filed this report.
All right, let's go inside and check it out. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Ben.
Great to see you.
Welcome.
Thanks for
Yeah.
joining us today.
Since 2016, Mark has been UVM's maple specialist, where he works with Vermont's maple producers
Boy, it's right on the line.
to help ensure the success of the state's maple industry.
So, Mark, the traditional image of maple syrup production is buckets and horses, but I don't see any buckets around here.
Right. So that technology still works as well as it did 100 years ago, and there are still people who use it. The difference is modern maple production really relies on plastic tubing and a supplemental vacuum to accentuate the pressure differences inside the tree and outside of the tree. At the end of the day, that just means you get a higher yield of sap per tap than you would if you were using more traditional techniques like a bucket.
So what are some other innovations that we might see here?
So this research center employs modern techniques, certainly reverse osmosis, which is essentially a filter which takes out molecules that are as small as water molecules, but the larger sugar molecules that are found in sap won't fit through the filter. So what you end up doing is taking 75–80% of the water out of the sap using a very efficient pump and filter system rather than a pretty inefficient system of atmospheric boiling. So the traditional evaporator is essentially a big ball of flame underneath a thin metal pan with liquid, in this case sap, boiling. That takes a lot of energy to remove the water from the sap. The reverse osmosis machine will, using pressure and electricity, force the water through that filter, thereby separating out a large amount of the water. Then you boil that concentrated sap in a traditional evaporator. That's where the color and flavor gets formed, is in the evaporator.
So, Mark, maple production is weather dependent. How is climate change affecting the maple industry?
Right. There's a lot of complexity to answering that question. A lot of times we want to talk about time scale. What's happening right now? What are the influences of weather right now? And then what are going out further in time? What are the bigger picture climate related issues? So right now, sugar makers are definitely seeing the ideal weather for sap production, which would be that freezing temperatures followed by above freezing temperatures in sort of a cycle, we're seeing the best concentration of those days moving earlier in the calendar than before. So whereas people might be tapping end of February in the past, now we're seeing people tap quite early. And the starting of when you tap is important based on the weather, but it's also important to know how many taps you have. So if you have, say, 500 taps, you can do that in a couple of days. Someone who has 50,000 taps has to really think well in advance. When is that weather showing up at my location? And how many people do I have that are skilled enough to do a good job tapping? Then you start working out the number of days it's going to take to do it. So we actually see the largest operations in Vermont tapping in December, starting to tap in December or January, which is really pretty much unheard of, except that all those factors I mentioned, really large operations, limited labor, all those things push the date earlier and earlier when people have to start tapping. So that's pretty important. Right now, sugar makers are dealing with warm temperatures. Warm temperatures are associated with maybe not ideal sap flow when it stays warm and doesn't freeze up. So although it hasn't gotten hot, and you could debate what is a hot temperature, but certainly you haven't seen anything in the 70s. We've seen temperatures in the 50s and 60s. But we haven't hit that really high temperature that can sometimes close off the tap holes and really see a reduced amount of sap and definitely reduced quality.
It's amazing to learn about how the maple industry keeps adapting. I can't wait to see what they come up with next. At the Proctor Maple Research Center, I'm Ben Willis with Across the Fence.
We hope Ben's visit will inspire you to go visit your local sugar maker. Go to vermontmaple.org to find a sugar maker in your area who is participating in this weekend's open house. It's fun for the whole family, plus snacks. What could be better? My thanks to the crew behind the scenes here at WCAX who always keep it tight, straight, and downhill. I'm Jolie Whitney. This is Across the Fence. Have a good one.